Hello everybody and welcome back to my build on the pickup. As you can see here, we are going to do the water pump, but just thought I'd show you just a few bits I've been getting on with as well, because I was checking out the actual rust, the amount that I actually had on the chassis and the body at the front before I went any further forward, just to see how much welding we actually need at this point. Also, we can't go out at the moment, as everybody well knows. It's April at the moment. We're into April, and I've been confined to home for 12 weeks. So everything that I can do with the parts that I do have, I will be doing. Okay. Here you can just see where the 3 bolts are on the top. The bolt inside the wing. You see on top of the door as well as a bolt. Then there's one right at the bottom of the wing, but I actually decided to saw it off because it was really rotten there. So there's a bolt down there. So taking off the wing and having a look inside to actually see, let's say, what it looks like. So let's have a look. Well, we can see there's plenty of rust. It'll have to be patched up. Even here, the mount, I'll have to recreate the mount on the chassis and the body by the looks of it. Not too bad on the top to go through, a bit dirty, just needs cleaning up really. So I think most of the rust is underneath, you'll see here, under the floor pan on the driver's side, which I'll have to cut out totally. I've got some ideas for that as well. I might be making a storage area maybe underneath the driver's feet there. We'll see anyway as we go along. Again, at the front, you can see it's been welded before, patched up. We said this cross member, I'll be cutting that out any minute now. So just looking inside to see where the rust is. So it definitely has to go. There's some rust there. We'll have to clean all this up. Like I said, we'll have to modify it. I have taken the AC off. Not going to be using it again. It's made space for other things as well. You can see this side, on the driver's side, it's more rotten. It tends to rot more on all vehicles, really. We can actually see here the mount, totally gone on all sides, really got thin. So again, we'll have to rebuild that as well as we go along. So we'll be changing everything. Just a quick look on the inside as well. You can see the cross member. This is going to be cut out, definitely. It's not holding anything, couldn't even hold the radiator anymore, so definitely needs to go at this point, and we'll get rid of it. Like we said, if we look on the inside, you can see here, it's gone here as well on the inside of the chassis mount. So we'll have to redo it, and here even the actual body mount there. So practically I'll redesign it, redo it, restructure it. Working all the way back, you can see here to there's a bit of rot at the back there, but like I said, it's more or less, the body can be fixed there. It's more the chassis we'll have to get on with to make sure it's strengthened enough. Bodies can be modified in any way and strengthened. It's the chassis that really has to be really top notch, especially if you're using it for off-roading. Very important to do that. So as you can see from this side, on the passenger side, there's not that much rot really. It's surface rust more than anything. It is a bit rusty, but everything will clean up fine on this side. Doesn't need as much attention as the other side. It never does. Plenty of space here where I've taken the AC off, and I plan to put other ancillaries there. So it was important to give it that space, because I've got to move things about, which we'll see later on towards the end of the video. You can see here, all surface rust can be cleaned up, not a problem. So from here we can actually see the cross member at the front's been cut out. Full view of the engine now. We can work on it with no problem whatsoever. I can do what I want, start welding brackets, putting things together and changing this water pump. So here we can see the bracket that holds the power steering pump. It's got to come off to access the water pump, because one of the bolts in the water pump actually hold this bracket as well. It's very important we actually take it off. In a moment I'll show you how we actually took this off. So here we actually have the power steering pump. You can see the bolt there that has to come out from the water pump. The 2 bolts you can actually see there within the pulley of the actual power steering pump. So we need to take these 2 bolts out. Then what we can do is look at the back. There's one on the lower side of the pump at the back as well. It has 3 bolts in all. If I can get to it, just trying to get the camera on the bolt at the moment, getting through here. Just focus, and once that bolt is removed, then the pump comes off. Logically, I've taken the hoses off before, but that'll be easy. You'll know how to take those off. It's not a problem to take the hoses off, and then take it from there. So once the pump's actually off, then we can just take the bracket off. As you can see, it'll be nice, easy and straightforward. Shouldn't be a problem. 1 bolt at the front, 3 inside here, and it comes straight off, not a problem. We have to remember that we've actually got the spring as well that is for the actual timing belt tensioner at the top. Remember, that leans onto the actual water pump, where, as you can see here, I've had to unloosen it a bit, take it off and strap it up a bit so it's not actually leaning on the water pump again. Once all 6 bolts are loosened on the actual water pump itself, you can see you just gently tap it. It's been on there for a while, so logically it's mated quite well to there. Normally I'd change the water pump before when I actually do the timing belt, but if you remember, we wanted to see first if the engine would work again before I started spending any money. So that's why I've ended up doing it afterwards. Otherwise I would have done this with the timing belt, to be honest. Every time you change your timing belt, it's always wise to actually change the pump as well with it. Just a good practice, because like I said, they do wear, and just to strip it down and get to it, it's quite a bit of a job, you know, so might as well do it when you're doing your timing belt. At this point, as you're removing the actual pump itself, be careful, because on the actual thermostat housing there is an actual pipe, a water pipe, that has an O-ring on it. So as you're pulling it away, you have to actually release it out of there. It's just an O-ring, there's no bolts, but you'll see it just creates a little bit of resistance when you actually take it off. So you'll see in a moment you have to jiggle it about a bit. At the moment I was just waiting for all the water to actually come out of it, so because I didn't actually drain the block itself. So here we go, actually nice and careful. You see it's loosened where the actual bolts are, holding near the actual housing, and you'll see in a moment as I take it away there's an existing pipe there. So here we go, it should come off now any minute now, nice and steady. And maybe it needs a little bit more persuasion. So again, nice and steady, taking the pump off. And there we go, we can actually see now on the other side where the pipe is. As the O-ring, you can see the hole at the front there in the housing, so you can see the mating surface as well as the pump. And we've got it all off, and it's time to put it on the bench in a moment, but you can see there, you can see the actual pipe there with the O-ring on. So here we actually have the new pump with all the gaskets and the O-ring. We can see the old one and the new one compared to the other. You'll be taking the actual housing for the thermostat off and actually putting it on the new pump itself. That's the part that you don't really need to get new, to be honest. If anything, a new thermostat. I've got one on order at the moment. Got a new thermostat coming, a new radiator. It's just a question of when it comes now, because it's taking a little longer, as we all know, to get deliveries. So here we can actually see the thermostat inside. I did try to boil anything. It doesn't seem to be moving much. You can see it's very rough. Just worth changing for what it costs. So we're just going to take this out, can you see? And we'll replace it with a new one when it comes in. I've just given the housing a little bit of a clean on the outside. I've disassembled it, took the bolts out. Yeah, it's a little bit crusty there, isn't it? So we've got a new one anyway, so we can discard that one really. But I'm going to put it in temporarily, just to afterwards when we put the pump back on, till the new one comes, just to take up that space. So here, taking it off, the housing's coming off. You can see there where the O-ring goes through, where the actual water pipe goes through to feed there. So, and here we are. So yeah, the thermostat, will change that. As you can see there, it needs a good clean before we mate it again and everything to the actual pump. So a bit of crud in there, but we'll clean it all out before we put it all together again. And it should be fine, not a problem. So at this point you can see I've actually scraped the mounting face where the pump goes on. It's all nice and clean. You can see here we've got the new water pump going on with the gaskets already, and I've temporarily put the bolts through it to hold the gasket so it doesn't fall off, or it'd be difficult to put on. So we're just going to nice and steadily just find, yep, there we go. First bolt's in, should do. Get that first one in, then all the rest will go, so we can put all 5 bolts, we can just tighten them up. Like I said, I am waiting for parts to come. I've ordered a new radiator and other parts as well, so I will be doing what I can. I will be mounting in a moment all the ancillaries. I'll be putting all the pulleys and fans back on and everything else, because I'll be aligning everything up logically before I actually do any metal work on the front, making sure, even putting the old radiator on, making sure that this clearance and tolerances are all right before I weld anything together, because once you've done it, you've actually done it. So here we go anyway. So the pump's nearly on. all 5 bolts. Doesn't take, as you can see, this job really, once all the front's off, doesn't take that long really, and it's a straightforward job. The pump itself did cost, what was it on eBay, just under £30 I think. So like I said, it's not it's a non-expensive job if you have to do it. If you're unsure about your water pump for the sake of £30 and making sure your water's circulating properly, it's worth doing it. I think the thermostat is somewhere around £12, £12 to £13, something like that. It's not over expensive. So one of these jobs you can do, let's say in a few hours on a weekend. Like I said, just a question of accessing it on with the radiator and everything. You can still get access to it if you didn't actually have everything off it, but it's just easier at the moment to do it. And like I said, I've got to change it now because it's worth doing. So once I've put the ancillaries on, then I have to start measuring. It's important for me to get it finished now so I can continue with what I need to do on the bodywork and on the actual chassis itself. So plus I've got other plans as well for where I'm mounting the other ancillaries, which is the actual alternator and the actual power steering pump. I'll be moving them around. Here I'm just tightening the bolts, just slightly under tension all the way around to make it easier. Then I'll just torque them down to the actual setting itself. Like I said, it just saves me going around with a torque wrench trying to not only fasten them up but torque them as well. So what I have to do afterwards is just torque them up, and that's it. And at this point I'm just going to go all the way around and torque them all up. I'm only going to torque up the 5 bolts, not the 6th one, as you well know, the one that holds the bracket for the bracket for the actual power steering pump. I'm not going to do, because that goes to another setting once we actually put the bracket on, and I'm not going to actually put that bracket on for the moment. So we're just going to leave it on its own. So it's 5 of the 6 bolts we're going to torque up to the setting that it says. Okay, so next we're actually going to put on the bottom part of the thermostat housing. Logically this has a gasket, you'll see in a moment, goes in between, and as you can see that has to slide in to that pipe with the O-ring on. So the next thing to do here is to actually change the O-ring on that tube. Now the tube does actually have a bit of a depression in it, so really when you're actually putting the housing on, it shouldn't allow, because it's deep enough, it shouldn't allow for that O-ring to slip back. But do be very careful when you're putting it on. Don't force it on in one blow. Gradually as you go on, just, let's say, make it work its way on. So as we said, as we're putting the bottom housing on, nice and careful on that O-ring, make it slide on nice and steadily. It is a dry fit on there, and logically I did clean it out before I actually mounted it again where the O-ring fits in, so it just takes a little wiggling about really, and it should fit in with no problems. Make sure you don't forget to put the gasket in between the housing and the pump, which is very important too. Here we go. And just put the first bolt in just to stop the gasket as well, for just a question of aligning it as you go along. And there we go. Once you've got the first one in, all we have to do all the way around, just put your bolts in and hand tight. And before installing, logically you do clean the actual mating face of the actual thermostat housing. Goes without saying. Make sure it's nice and clean. The gasket is very thin, otherwise it won't seat properly. I just temporarily put the old thermostat in just to seal off the waterway really, but I didn't torque or tighten up the bolts or anything, just hand tight till the new one comes, and then we'll torque it up and finish it off there. The actual last bolt on the water pump, I'm not going to tighten up for now, because as you remember, this is the one that holds the bracket. So until I've actually finished mounting the brackets I want to make and everything, we're actually not going to actually tighten that one up. We're going to leave it as it is for the moment. Now that the pump's on nice and tight, we can start looking again at the spring that's on the actual timing tensioner, so we can put it back where it belongs. So as you can see, it was loosened off, and we're just going to put it back where it was before and then torque it up. Well, here you can actually see I've mounted, let's say, the actual pulleys and fans, position where I want the alternator and the actual power steering pumps going to the other side. So what I've done is I'm trying to balance everything out and just not have it all hanging from one side. The AC was on this side before, so even the brackets, I'm going to try to make them sensibly as less invasive that I can, you know, not making them, overbuilding them or anything else, just how they should be, reinforced in the right way. This is going to take a little bit of time, but I'm sure that once I get it right, it'll look like they belong there. So this is the next project, let's say, before I go forward. Taking advantage that I can get to everything from the front at the moment, might as well make these brackets now and start the welding process on them and get back into it. Okay, so we'll see this all on the next video, hopefully, see how I get on with the brackets and everything else, and I'll be posting soon. So till next time, see you then.